by a Mihi.
So, whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E he aki ana te atukura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora.
A tēnei te ruru te kaukau mai nei ki hai mā whitiwhiti ki hai mā rakaraka tūpoko nui o te ruru te reko he pōhe ao kawatea tihei mauri ora. A mihi tuatahi mihi ki nā atua kaharoa, o mau kaha, o mau aroha kia mātou i tēnei wā, i nā wā katoa. A ka huri au taka whakaaro ki nā tini aitua, ko he atu ki te poe nā mate, haere, hari atura. Apti hono tātou hono rātou kia rātou, apti hono tātou hono tātou kia tātou, nā kai kaunihira, nā kai mahi, e te memo te hāpore e masakitaki nei, a tēnā koutou. A tēnā koutou, i o koutou whakaaro, i o koutou kōrero i tēnei wā, i pāna tēnei kaupapa, o tō tātou Mahere ātou, tēnei te mihi kia koutou. So, kia ora everybody. Thank you, Councillor Southworth, for the Karakia. Well done, awesome pronunciation, thank you. Just acknowledging those that have gone before us, those things that are bigger than us, and all of us here that are participating in the meeting and helping with this, and those that may be watching online as we deliberate on our annual plan. So kia ora. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. Just to advise that the meeting is being recorded and the recording has started. I've been informed there is a quorum present. If there's any change in order of business, state that now, but I don't think there is. So we'll move on. I'd just like to welcome Keela from the press down in the right-hand corner there. Welcome along, Keela. We've got no apologies. We've got no conflicts of interest, or are there any conflicts of interest? I don't believe there are. Extraordinary urgent business. We have not been advised of any. Notice the motion. There are no notice of motion that I'm aware of. So we can move to 7.1, which is deliberation on our annual plan. And it's on page 6 of your agenda, and the recommendations are also on page 6. And I'll ask Giles Southwell, Director of Corporate Services, to introduce the report. Giles, can you come to the table? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to remind councillors of the process that's been followed to date. So earlier in the year, council agreed to
Had an absolute hash at the start of this meeting. Sorry about that. But we have gone understanding, and I'll just interrupt you for a minute because we just need to get this on the table. But we have gone to option C in the standing orders, which we want to use for this meeting, which is a bit more open than the other options that we have available to us. And the note is there. So it's adopt option C as outlined in standing orders 22.1. And the councillors need an opportunity to look what 22.1 looks like over the default. Maybe we can read that out. If we got that in standing orders, we'll read that out.
What's on the sheet that you were handed earlier on?
Yeah, so I'd like the recommendations on the screen there. I'd like to move that.
Yeah, I'll second it.
And seconded by Craig. Do you need time for a discussion on this? Everyone clear on it? Everyone seems to be nodding.
Can I speak to it as a second?
Yeah. So Craig, as the seconder of the motion, will speak to it.
Kia ora koutou. Look, if you've got your standing orders there, you'll know there's a little thing in the back about option A, B, and C. Option A is what we would normally use, but it is quite restrictive and can get confusing. Whereas option C is just a bit more unrestricted. You don't have all those sort of cancelling movers and seconders out. So that's the reason that we think it's useful. But it does need a 75% majority to pass. So, hey, we'll put it to the floor and see how we go.
Okay, if there's any other discussion on that, if there isn't, I'll put that to you. That moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Pauling. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? That's carried. So thank you. Giles. Sorry about the interruption.
So just to remind councillors that earlier in the year, it was agreed to put the annual plan out to engagement rather than consultation. This was primarily to give visibility to the community of the plans for the annual plan, which are not significantly different from what was agreed last year, and to elicit feedback that could inform discussions on the LTP. The other key part was the council intent to limit the rate rise to the previously agreed 10% that was set out in the annual plan for the current year. It's also important to note that the council, as with most parts of the economy, face significant pressures in context of the council in terms of cost of living, supply chain, staff pressures in terms of recruitment, but also in terms of the legislative programme that is coming from government. All of those have been considered as we have taken the annual planning process forward. So we go into the next financial year carrying significant financial risk, although as an executive team, we believe that those financial risks can be managed, particularly through the regular reforecasting of the financial position during the year to help us manage those. As a result of the work that's been done, we have identified savings or reprioritisation of approximately $4 million to help manage those pressures. And we've also taken a number of other steps, including introducing a vacancy factor into our labour budgets to also create some ability to manage the pressures that we face to keep the rate rise to the 10% indicated. So the annual plan that is presented, whilst it does show some small reprioritisations of funding in terms of that $4 million that I referred to earlier, has no material impact on the levels of service that were set out, and that the intention is in particular to manage pressures that emerge during the year, throughout the year, in particular in the public transport space. And that's the focus is therefore on strategic conversations to inform the LTP. So the annual plan, as presented, we are looking for the resolutions to be debated and discussed, and then we can move forward to prepare the annual plan for adoption on the 21st of June. I or my colleagues are more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So now's the opportunity to seek clarification from Giles regarding the report that's in front of us. I found it really quite good to read and reasonably balanced in terms of where we're at with this, the situation we have. Right.
Kia ora, Giles, thank you. Just in relation to the reprioritisation information, yeah, I note that it's like almost 4 million. Yeah. Have you got the details of that available? I know it was sent around, but can we table that in the meeting?
I believe so. We have sent it round. We can run copies off if people don't have hard copies.
The Me Ururako amount is 974,000, and there's no reprioritisation of that, so it stays at 974. Thank you.
Grant.
Thanks, Giles. Just a query on item on clause 39 in the report. Staff provide an update to council if there are any budget items presented by the government this week that might affect the annual plan or our ability to fund things.
So I believe that the summary of the budget was circulated to councillors on budget day. The primary area that is of interest or relevance to the council is the changes proposed or announced in relation to fares in terms of support for cheaper fares across the country. The fare trial the half price fares that the government announced to end on the 30th of June. Our intention is, as per council decision, to implement the fare trial from the 1st of July. We are working through the implementation and the impact of those changes that have been announced by government. They will impact on the way in which we implement the fair trial over the coming months. We are bringing a briefing back, I believe, to council next week on what that means. But we believe the fair trial in its current form, broadly speaking, can go ahead on the 1st of July. There's no impact on the annual plan as drafted.
My question to you is for clarification around the getting the right operational focus on the budget outcomes. Are there, my understanding is that could rely on the national ticketing system to make it streamlined. Is that correct?
So my understanding is that it will be easier once the national ticketing solution has been implemented. So we are in the fortunate position in Canterbury that we will be the first region to implement the national ticketing solution, aiming for the middle of 24. So we will have a reasonably small period to compare to some of the other regions in terms of managing the implementation of the government's announcements before we implement the solution. But it will be easier.
Chasing that up a little bit more in terms of clarity for myself is that these changes start 1st June, 1st July, is it? That the announced changes?
So the government, I believe, is keen to implement some of them as quickly as possible. From dates around September have been mentioned. I think each PTA is working out how quickly we can implement them. Obviously, we also are implementing the fair trial, so we will be laying that over the top. We will provide detailed guidance to council in the briefing next week. We're still working through the speed at which we can implement the changes announced by government, but all PTAs are in the same position.
I guess my issue with this is to take full advantage of that in the way the operation runs, that it's not absolutely straightforward at this point in time that we can pick up some of that stuff.
It's not absolutely straightforward.
Yeah, so the information we've been provided with reprioritisation, so where we're cutting funds from particular programs through our work and through all the portfolios. So we've got nearly $4 million which has been advised by staff. And I'm just wondering, were there some other options that were also potentials for cuts, or how was that arrived at? And was there any other option? Like, how was that arrived at?
So the work that was done by staff across the council was recognising that many areas of expenditure are already fully committed through contracts that have been signed. So we really looked at where there was variable spend involved, but also very clearly that it should have minimal, if any, impact on achievement of levels of service, because that's what we're committed to. The only area that we've explicitly excluded from this conversation was around the public transport. There were a number of options put that potentially could have been implemented in public transport. We took the view that given the current situation in public transport in terms of funding, reserves, pressures, opportunities, that managing those throughout the year with appropriate briefings and information to council and decisions was a more sensible way to do it, rather than trying to include it in this round of reprioritisation or changes in expenditure.
So with this, a couple of more, maybe more. I can ask questions about the responses to the feedback on the themes. Is that good? Yeah, so just I noticed that because under air quality there's some reduction in the air quality budget, but I noticed in the feedback theme that there was suggestion that we might do some work around Rolleston Airshed, and I wondered if is that still going to be feasible? Is that something that's still feasible with the reduction in the?
Could you just point which page you're looking at in terms of that?
There may be just an indicative requirement that has come through, but be an LTP process. That would be LTP more than this plan.
So sorry, so it's on page 20 of our deliberations report under R. So an initial investigation would be required, which could take 1 to 2 years. Recommend it's explored during the development. So explored during the development of the long-term plan, but could scope this work as part of this annual plan in year 3. So I think there's some work that would take place this year in order to be ready to put something into the long-term plan. So I just want to check that that's not going to be negatively affected by the reduction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A question of clarification, and it's around the 10% threshold in terms of consultation as opposed to engagement with the community on a proposed annual plan rate rise. If the council in its deliberations were to increase the rate rise above the 10%, does that have implications in terms of does that have legal or moral obligations, given that we consulted on a 10% rate rise? Most of the submissions were in favour of our annual plan, which was only a 10% rate rise. If we were to deviate above the 10% rate rise, does that have implications in terms of the process we've been through to date?
It depends on the size of any increase and how that council views that in terms of the significance and whether that triggered consultation, and also the implications of that, given that council had gone out with a commitment to stay within 10%. So I think legally there is a small increase that you would be allowed, that you could support without triggering further work and adopt an annual plan on that, but it would depend on where that expenditure was being targeted, because it's not just obviously in relation to what you're spending it on, how much it is, it's what's being spent on and the consequences of that. But there's no definitive answer.
Thank you. Carmen, did you have something you wanted to add to that last bit?
Yeah, thank you, through Chair. I was just going to say, with regards to the previous question, staff believes that they can actually scope out that work within the current budgets they have for the equality for Ollaston.
Great. And so one more on the feedback themes, which I think might be a Tim Avery question, but under my thing's moved, sorry, my computer's not helping me today. So under I, and I can't see the page number, I think it might be on page, here we go, page 25, double I, under water quality concerns. So feedback theme again, water quality concerns. And I just noticed at the end of the staff advice, it says that we're investigating running a private well information roadshow across the region to include an indicative nitrate test and provision of information about other testing. So I know we had a report come back in February that we thought we weren't going to do that, but I'm just wondering, is that now back on the table? Are we looking at that again now?
Through you, Chair, I can respond to that. So that is, in fact, that was the second resolution for the notice of motion. So when we brought back the recommendation that we would run a campaign, that campaign work is underway now in this financial year, but also the second resolution that council then put in then was that we would also investigate alongside community health and the zone committees and the TAs. So that's referring to that investigation work to see if we do run one. Yeah, so it's from that notice of motion, the second piece.
Okay, so slightly different in my interpretation of that second amendment was it was going to be done more piecemeal, depending on the zone committees and the local. But actually we're looking at it regionally again.
So this is referring to investigating exactly that. Is how should it be done? Could it be done? Is there a willingness for it to be done? So that's exactly that piece of work. Yeah.
Thank you. My question for not really, well, it is clarification, but this, as I've already indicated, is a good summary of where we're at. However, this is for the 24-25 year. Sorry, 23, a year ahead of myself. So we really won't, we really can't predict, I guess, risk. And my question is, for clarification, how much? I know we've got a 7% inflation figure that we're sort of putting in here, and I know that we need to work pretty hard, or you guys need to work pretty hard to make sure that we've got a balanced budget. Are there any other risks that you can see? That that we're in an interesting job market, for example. We've got a lot of work that's heading our way. We've been continually pushed on by central government to to provide information to them. Part of that, we've got a political process that's going to possibly change where we're at. Do you consider any of that at all?
I've considered all of that in the round. Ultimately, that's the environment that we're working in. So I think in consultation with council, the staff advice was that we believe the annual plan as presented does carry some financial risk into the year. However, we do believe that it is more important to focus on the long-term strategic direction of the council through the long-term plan. So, for example, in the annual plan, we included an amount to start rebuilding reserves. That question and that issue is not going to go away. However, that does provide a small amount of funding that would be available should any unforeseen event take place. Clearly, one of the biggest risks we face is that we're going into winter and we are seeing an increase in severe weather events. So if we were to experience some major flooding during the winter, that would put on significant pressure. We're also in the process of negotiations with unions. That clearly, we don't know the outcome of that. We do have an interesting labour market that we're working to across the country, and obviously more in particular locally. And we do have significant programs of work to deliver. What we are finding is that in terms of the financial and delivery performance, whilst we are well advanced in delivering the programs of work for the current year, we do find it challenging to deliver the programs of work that we've committed to because of staff shortages, contractor shortages, supply chain shortages, weather, etc., etc. So there's a number of factors, and we tend to focus on the downsides, on the risks. But clearly, there is also, the speed at which new programs are established. I think most organisations tend to be overly optimistic about how quickly they can set these things up. That counterbalances to some extent. So one of the things we're trying to do is to be much more diligent about managing in-year performance and in-year financials, and actually making sure that we're taking a critical look at those areas during the year so that we can manage and pull the appropriate levers during the year. And as I said earlier, that's one of the reasons why we've explicitly gone public transport being approximately 40% of our expenditure, a number of policy decisions by council and government that need to be implemented, a number of pressures in the public transport community expectations. Those need to be worked through in a strategic and thoughtful way. And that's one of the reasons we've gone, all rather than trying to concertina the conversation into annual plan deliberation, let's take the time to make sure we consider those with time and full information, and make decisions that are positive for the long-term future of public transport in Canterbury and the sustainability of the council and the way in which it operates.
I would note that we had our wishing well out last year about flood resilience and expecting an outcome from the budget, and seriously nothing there, which is a concern. And I will just note the comment that you made around winter and flooding, and let's all ensure that we don't get them. So, because that's going to be a really tight position for us to be involved in. But if there's no more conversation, or no more further questions, oh, sorry.
Got it, Giles. So I'm just going back to the earlier questions about the budget impacts or otherwise. So just getting it clear in my head. So I know it's hard because it's only just come out. So we don't have a number in our mind at the moment about what, either that might help us, like a reduction of that current thing, but that will be with us by the time we go to decide next month.
So I believe we have a briefing with council on fares on the 1st of June. We were originally planning, obviously, to exclusively talk about the implementation of the council's fare trial so that everyone understood what's happening. We will include the way in which we are thinking or planning to implement the government's changes. That will have implications, either positive or negative, in terms of the funding and financial position. There is still some detail to be worked through in terms of how it is going to be implemented, what Tautahi will fund, what we need to fund, when fares are set, and the limits that are applied, and we need to work that through. But you will have that information as far as we have it before you adopt the annual plan.
Right. If there's nothing further from councillors, thank you, Giles. Thank you. Oh, there is. Sorry, Giles. Sorry.
I just had a question on the rating units. Have we got that data from the TAs yet about the increase in the rating units for the districts?
So we normally build in an assumption, I'm assuming these additional houses being built, of approximately $1 million of additional income across the region. That number, I'm looking, Brian, we have included that number in the annual plan. It's a rough approximation. So we
haven't got the final numbers yet.
It depends on the rates that come in ultimately. We've made an assumption that will be an additional $1 million, and we've included that in the budget already.
I think we're clear now, Giles. Thank you very much for that and your input there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move to the recommendation on page 6 of the agenda, but we'll just take one first, recommendation 1 first. And so I'm looking for once that's up on the screen there, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for that. And then we will have a discussion about this, about the paper, about I guess the implications of what's in the paper. And I'd just like to do that first before we went to people wanting to make amendments. So do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Karakia, seconded by Councillor East. So that's going to move in a second there now. So I'll open that up for discussion. Do you want to speak to this, Councillor Karakia? Councillor East, do you want to speak to this as the mover? Any other discussion around this?
I'd just like to say thank you for putting it together. I know there's a lot of information comes through in submissions, and it really is one of the highlights for me is reading through submissions, which sounds like odd, but it's, you know, it's a great way to understand what the community are thinking about, and then to see it themed down and summarised and staff advice, and you know what we're helping us to understand what we need to look at for long-term plan. I just think it's a really useful piece of work, and I really appreciate it. And I know how much work will be sitting behind that you've boiled it down to just this. So thank you.
Look, I've got a comment to make, a general comment to make about our position. Sorry, Dion, you go first.
I was just going to ask if we can make an amendment to that, just to include this, to make it very clear. So add in what?
Can we just have a general comment from people first, rather than make an amendment? I mean, I'm more than happy to do that, but that gets us into a whole process that then becomes a process about amendments, and about seconding, and about standing orders. Can I help? Yeah, you can help.
Just been informed that it's been tabled, so it will be in the minutes. All good. So it doesn't need an amendment.
Thank you.
It's been tabled.
Thank you, Councillor Karakia.
Sure, Tim. Yeah, just making the point that just noting this now. This is the beginning. I think the next one is the main one.
Director of Finance here on the issues that may be around the table. This is an opportunity for discussion on what's in that paper. That paper is fundamental to the decisions we need to make today. It informs those decisions. There's staff advice in there. There's financial advice in there. There's a commentary on our engagement with our community. So all the information that you need to discuss, I would rather people make well, my personal opinion, I'm going to make a general comment on this. And if others want to do so, then we can move to the amendment process, because I think the amendment process, what that does is it gets tied up in the whole process. Councillor Sunkel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm quite happy to support the motion, the information that we have received and the explanations of where we have landed in the financial space, reflecting that community feedback. So more than happy to support it when the motion is put.
I think there's a lot of work that's gone into, the report and the summary. However, I feel that with biodiversity, the chop there is, I don't think it reflects the feedback received from the community, and once again is, not part of much of the process. I feel like it's been shortchanged again. That's just my comment. Thank you.
All right, so everyone, sorry, Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the summary of public engagement, you need to take it from a holistic point of view, and that is we went out to discuss a 10% rate rise. We had significant, and one of the things the summary doesn't do is identify those submitters who cover large populations. So a district council submission tends to have the same weight as an individual submission, despite the fact it might represent the views of 30,000 people as opposed to one person. And that is a consistent flaw in our summary of our submission processes. But I think we've got to recognise that the submissions, whether they were supportive or not, and what they were supportive of, was under the condition that we were limiting the rate rise to as little as possible, given the financial pressures we're under. And so we need to think about that as we discuss the implications for where we might go with our rate rise going forward this morning. And I note that a lot of those submitters were concerned about the level of rate rise and the cost of living and the impacts of inflation, despite the fact that that would clearly have a limitation on our ability to carry out some of our proposals. So I just make that note and yeah.
Kia ora, thanks, Mr. Chair. I too just want to acknowledge the work that's gone into this, and I do want to acknowledge that given we've got an official cash review today, we've got huge inflation on food, all sorts of things. It is incumbent on us, I suppose, to keep rates as low as we possibly can. But I took from the submissions that we had, especially the ones that turned up in person, and I can think of a couple of examples where a parent came in with her children and said, I am prepared to pay more, given that some of the decisions that are being made today are going to influence the children that I've brought in. So I just wanted to acknowledge the work that's been done, and also acknowledge as a first-time councillor the difficulty of trying to weigh up where we are as far as the day-to-day impact that's going to be on, especially some of the people in the area that I support, that I'm representing, but also where are we standing, given that we are a council that prior to coming on had made a commitment to things like a climate emergency and a number of initiatives around public transport, etc. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think this motion that we have in front of us is just to acknowledge that and the staff advice, and thank you for your input, councillors. So I think we'll just need to move on probably to the next one, but unless there's further comment, I'll put that to the council. Moved by Councillor Karakia and seconded by Councillor East. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? And that is carried. So thank you for that. We'll move to, we'll get number 2 up. And we'll look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Sunkel, seconded by
This is
nuts and bolts.
Oh, we talked about
that.
No.
So
Peter's buttons now.
I'll just move to Councillor Sunkel, who's moved this motion, and ask him to comment, and then to Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will speak briefly for this, as I understand there to be some amendments made, which I'll speak more fully to at the time if I can. I congratulate and thank staff for what they have brought to the table, given the challenge that we face with inflation, cost inflation, personnel challenges, the gamut of government change and regulation and uncertainty. So to be able to bring to us a balanced budget at 10% is, in my mind, a magnificent effort. We have prioritised, and I simply just want to say thank you to the staff for that, and recognise what they have achieved, and recognise the paper as it sits on the table. Thank you.
Councillor Mackenzie, you might speak now, or do you want to reserve your right to speak later? Okay, Councillor Edge.
They're just foreshadowing some amendments to that, Chair.
That we have here. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much. Look, I definitely would support the comments that have been made by Councillor Sunkel. I mean, most of the staff in the room here will know that from previous terms of council, I've vigorously argued for prioritisation and revisiting our programs of work and cutting our cost to suit. So I too really thank staff, FCE is the lead, and staff that have been involved in putting this annual plan together and keeping the envelope within the 10%, which was landed and agreed by a previous council, of which 50% of us were on that previous council and made those decisions. So how do I feel about 10% rate rise? I'm not happy at all with 10% rate rise. I think I'd love to see a much reduced, probably 6 or 7%, but it is what it is, and I will acknowledge the fact that we have roughly got, what is it, another 10.5 mil on the 15. So, you know, a substantial amount of reprioritisation and cutting our costs has been found. So it's for that reason that I am today reluctantly going to support this rate rise as proposed.
Right, so you foreshadowed some amendments. Maybe we should just move on and work with those. If there are amendments, obviously this is substantive recommendation changes if they're successful. And that's, Councillor Mackenzie, that's when you will get your opportunity to talk to the substantive one at the end, but also during the process of the amendments.
Thanks, Chair. I sent them through the other day. I'm just wondering if you could bring them up. Given the comments from Chief Financial Officer, if I could withdraw the first amendment or first proposed amendment, that's no longer required. We now understand that the money that was allocated in the annual plan, the draft annual plan, will remain. So that leaves 2 proposed amendments related to the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund. The first one there is I'm keen to add or basically reallocate $250,000 that was to be removed from the regional and strategic, from the water Working Together for Healthy Water and Land program, which was effectively the zone action plan budgets, which is going to reduce those budgets from 100,000 to 75,000. That balance of that be reallocated to the regional strategic portfolio engagement and influence program, Waitaha Action to Impact. And then the second one there, 1.2, is that council approves an additional 250,000 to be allocated to the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund, making a total of 500,000 to that fund. And the reason that I've done that is that this is a public exercise, or will I talk to that now, Chair?
What we need to do is establish that we put these are two separate issues, and so that if you wouldn't mind just speaking to 1.1 or moving 1.1, then we can talk to 1.1, and I think substantially your conversation as the mover can include that.
Thanks, Chair. So 1.1, the reallocation, the zone committees do really good work, and but they are sort of focused on a different thing and a different aspect of environmental improvement. Sorry. Oh, I'll move that. Sorry. Yes.
We can. Sorry. So now we can speak to a grant. So carry on. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so it's really just not losing the money for environmental action plan activity, but it's the potential under the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund to support a significant number of people and organisations across Canterbury who undertake voluntary environmental improvement projects, mainly planting projects, and they do a huge amount of good. And I just think that that's one way of spreading the load across Canterbury in terms of that one. So, yeah.
Yeah. So again, acknowledging the work that zone committees do, but the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund is really enabling communities to focus on the biodiversity aspects and across the region. It's a region-wide fund. It was hugely successful last year. We had $1.5 million worth of applications from the community. Every project that's funded has to find at least 30% of match fund, be that in kind or be that dollars. And so there's an efficiency there in terms of, you get more value for your money. The other part of this is that it's really open to different scales of projects. So we have, for example, the Sixth Living Laboratory was funded last time, Summit Road Society, the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, significant projects and significant trusts that have got well-established providers of biodiversity and working with community and education as well. They are well known, but this also enables really small projects, like small local community projects, schools, just at all the various scales. This is an opportunity to support our communities. The educational part is really important. So when we enable communities to work, there's a ripple effect, and people come in, your neighbour's doing something, you mention it, and they get involved, or kids get involved and they tell the parents. It's just such a great way of getting more understanding about what possible work can be done to improve the environment. And so I just think for 250,000, which I totally acknowledge that we're in stretched times, but this is essentially, it's about $1 per rating unit. That's for a whole year extra. And I just think the value that this brings is enormous. I'm also really concerned that we might get $1.5 million worth of applications again. And this year in our Y Fund, we have $183,000 left. So that's potentially an enormous amount of work from community projects applying, and for our work to go through to whittle it down to distributing 183,000, which just seems like a missed opportunity, and that we'd be letting our community down if we don't put more into this fund. And these are all projects that they run on the smell of an oily rag. None of them are excessive or profligate. So that's the reason why I'm really supporting this. Thank you.
Can I ask points of clarification, please? Probably through your institute of staff. The first one is we have actually. Sorry? Okay. The question is around the word reallocation of 250,000. I understand that we have been told that that's within the tabled paper of reprioritisation. Am I correct? That's my question.
Do you need some time to think through that? That's a pretty key piece of information. Claire, would you say that again, please? Your button, Claire.
The mover talked about a reallocation of the 250,000, which my understanding is that that is included within the prioritisation, so it's actually been reallocated to other work.
The advice that I'm receiving here is no, I don't. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Are you happy we're on the same page, Taplin?
Yep, through you, Chair. So in the reprioritisation, the work that's already been done, it has taken that down. So it's taken that 0.25 away. So it would be, you'd have to put it back on again. You'd have to, yeah, you could, it's already taken away. You'd have to put it back on again. Yeah, it would be an additional 2.5 from the reprioritisation piece that you've got there.
Thank you. It's been added. My second point was I just want confirmation that Waitaha Action to Impact Fund only applicants have to be a legal entity, charitable trust, corporated society or non-profit, which is quite different to zone committee fundings, which it can be individuals and projects, correct? Yes, we're getting a nod.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak against the motion, and I guess I referenced the second one whilst we haven't got it up on the board. There's a thought that once upon a time Nero was believed to have fiddled while Rome burned. And I find the challenges that this organisation faces at the moment, the pressures of staffing, the pressures of questions and demands that we are faced within the constraints that we have, are significant, and I don't want this organisation to fall over. So as we continue to I guess, push pressure into the organisation and want to do more with less resources or demand more resources from the community, I do find it somewhat incendiary in a sense that we are increasing that pressure on the organisation and equally into the wider community. We've heard that we have staffing and personnel issues, not for the want of trying to get them. They are just not there, going right back to, I guess, policy settings at central government. So we don't have the staff to achieve outcomes. We've heard about our policies or central government's policies and our inability to get really clear direction, not quite sure where we're going and the challenges that we face. So we have been able to reprioritise because of that uncertainty. We have cost inflation, which is rampant. And again, 2 o'clock today, Reserve Bank will announce, I presume, increases in the OCR with a probability of further increases to come, creating further tensions and challenges, not just to us and how we work within our budgets, but within the wider community. And inflation remains rampant due to some decisions of central government. So I'm really challenged that we want to say it's only $500,000, it's 250 there, it's 250 there. God bless their socks. The government, that's no great friend of mine, has reprioritised their spending, looked at their aspiration, looked at what they want to achieve, and pulled back due to the fiscal challenges that we have. So again, I thank our staff for being able to put in place a budget that sits in the 10%. They have allowed us to achieve our levels of service, so no loss of level of service, being able to reprioritise. So I just find it a real challenge that when central government is looking at reprioritising, our staff are looking at reprioritising to stay within a budget. The challenges of our communities, whether you've got $1 in your pocket in the wider community, or whether that $5, which you say is not very much, but it's a cup of coffee, it's a loaf of bread, it's a bus fare at our lower end of our communities. It all adds up and it will continue to add. So, Mr. Chairman, I really struggle with the additions that we want to put in, as good as they are. I could sit here and go, I want more transport for Selwyn District. I could say, I want the catchment work to go in Selwyn District. That's millions of dollars. But we know that we'll have that conversation down the line. If we all sat here and had our personal projects, we would increase our budgets by millions and significant percentages. we have to cut our cloth, so I speak against it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor East, and then Councillor Swiggs.
Thank you. Look, I'm generally in support of the substantive motion, and it worries me at times where we've spent a lot of work on an annual plan, and I do acknowledge the work that staff have put into this plan, but last minute changes don't sit comfortably with me. So from that point of view, I wouldn't support the amendment. What I am supportive of is the actual notion to be looking more at the Waitaha Action Impact Fund. And I sort of asked myself the question regarding water zone committees themselves. Have they, and it's been suggested to me by a number of people that they may have reached their useful life in the intention of what they were set up for in the first place. And having attended a few water zone committee meetings over the years, both with this organisation and the City Council, it seems to me now that most of their work is in actually just allocating funds. So I would ask the question, what does it actually cost us now to administer the water zone committees to allocate? I think it costs us more money to allocate the funds that we give them. So we need.
I think we're off topic a bit, Dave. To be fair, good points, but not for this. I don't think for this point we have here. Dion, and then Joe.
Yeah, I've gone through this a little bit carefully to try and understand the fund itself, the Waitaha Action and Impact, or Action to Impact Fund, and I think there's a lot of amazing work that is going on there, and our communities are really quite amazing. But I think for me the question today is whether we're supporting a 10.33% increase based on what we're going to be doing here, which is adding $500,000 to the budget if I'm taking all of it together, because that's what we're looking at since we've got the clarification, or whether we're looking at a 10% increase in the rates. And I'm not supportive of 10.33%. I think the work should have been done to find appropriate substitutions if we're going to bring it to the table at this stage in the debate. I'm not even happy with 10%, but that's what we've got. We've got to live. We've got to do what we've got to do. But so I won't be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, David. Look, I did cut you off because you went into zone committees, but did you have a specific point that you're pushing on with 1.1? Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I'm going to support these amendments by Councillor Ed by maintaining the Mahere funding that I note without an amendment, and by increasing the available funding for the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund. We'll be putting a clear signal out to the region that this council, despite economic headwinds, that we maintain our current support for the regeneration of our natural environment on the ground in the community. And these are not our personal projects. These are the projects of the people of the region. And finally, I note that this move will also imply that we have heard the feedback themes from our engagement process, because I certainly heard the theme of biodiversity throughout that process. I thank staff for their work in this, and I thank councillors for the chance to deliberate today. Thank you.
I would like to support the amendment as well. The reason being is what I laid out earlier. Biodiversity once again has sat in the back seat of a very long ride, and I think, we're talking about dollar for dollar, but if you can get 30% back from other like-minded sources through this fund, then we're enabling communities to do better and to give them incentive as well. So I think I recommend this. Thank you.
Kia ora. In my previous iteration as a working member of the community, as the GM of an environmental trust for almost 13 years, and the recipient of both Waitaha funding and zone committee funding, the benefits to the community in these smaller projects is just paramount to the success. Our one, the Bio to Know project, was wonderful. It not only led to revitalisation, restoration of really valued lands, and in the case of where I was, these are traditional significant taonga for Ngāi Tuahuriri, mana whenua here, but also the mental well-being and health of our communities, the number of organisations, and I mentioned Whakatapu as an example, who would come out, and people who were feeling disengaged, disenfranchised by the community were reinvigorated to become members of, functioning members of society, positively engaging with nature. And it is quite clear that this is something that we really need to support, given, as Councillor Davies mentioned, the overwhelming comments about biodiversity, future generations, ensuring that there is something there that is a semblance of what people in my age group took for granted 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Kia ora.
Cool. Kia ora, anō kia mana. First of all, I want to acknowledge Councillor Edge and Councillor Southworth for putting this forward, because that Waitaha Action to Impact Fund is indeed, when you look at the past recipients of that fund, they are worthy, and everyone's worthy of kind of the funding for the very, very important work that they do. So that's my first point. And then understanding with this particular fund, one of the things I think that's quite key is that it actually is only those specific to a particular part of that philanthropic of the philanthropic organisations. So what that means is that you need to be a trust and all that. So what about the the smaller groups of people that are not quite structured to that level? So there's only sort of one kind of part of that. I think the other part too is that sure, it's a region-wide fund, 30% match funding, which is really important, and then open to the different scales of the project. So when I look at this thing though, is that, and my previous colleagues at this table have talked about physical control, discipline, budget discipline, and then when I think about this, is that we're not actually taking any money away, because there's still 350,000 allocated. Now, I understand, because you think that it might be oversubscribed. Well, it will be oversubscribed, like it always is. But we're in a situation where it's really important that we are disciplined here. And the optics of this council, to me, need to be that we are disciplined in budgets so that we can work. Actually, there's been reprioritisation. Our staff, as we've all said, have worked really hard, to get to this point, and 10%, go over 10%, and then, we're actually starting a downward spiral. I mean, this is only the First Amendment, actually. It's interesting to see how we're going to create a precedent actually moving this thing forward for the rest of them. So, look, Otoko and actually know what you're trying to do. I applaud that. But in the interest of budget discipline, all the work that's gone in, we've already made a decision. Let's not sort of go back on that one. Let's just stay with it. So I'm actually against this amendment.
Kia ora tātou, nei ono mihi kia koutou. Tautoko ngā mihi ko mihia ki ngā kaimahi, o te kaunihere nei, kia koe Stephanie me tō kaimahi, hei whakarite tēnei Mahere putia, o te tau nei, kei raro I te kauoro, nei anō to Mihi. Just acknowledging the staff and just managing to reprioritise and to get it under the 10%. And we've heard everyone acknowledge the staff for that. And then just hearing about I'm kind of, I hear John talk about challenged. I'm kind of torn here because as we heard from Councillor Korako, that the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund is a great fund, and it's available for the whole community to apply for that. But having heard and just recently and other issues, just the impact of inflation, cost of living, also internally for staff. And also just knowing what the staff have done to get under 10%, or inside 10%, that it, even though the Waitaha Action Impact Fund is great, and then seeing prioritisation into there, I'm torn. But the one thing that really kind of is because of the budget from the government, and we don't know the impact of that right now. It's kind of, if we kind of knew that information, I'm not saying it's staff, it's just the way that it's kind of lined up. I find it hard to say yes to an increase, just because what's going on with the community. So after speaking to my constituents, just across the Ngārunanga, but also in the community as well, especially on the east side of Tautahi, that everyone's under pressure here, and so I'm thinking more of impact on people, and even though I said I'm torn because I really support the intent of the motion, and without having that information from the budget and what that it can do for the overall budget of for Environment Canterbury, I will probably be sitting on the fence on this one, and then when it comes to the vote, I'll kind of decide. But kia ora tātou.
Good, thank you, Nick.
Firstly, I'd just like to congratulate the staff on a fantastic job and getting the down under 10%. Or less than 10 would be nice. I've talked to quite a lot of people in the rural community where I live, and have had a little bit of flack, quite a lot of flack about the 10%. But a lot of them realise they're running businesses that there is huge inflation there currently. I'm on the zone committee, and we are doing some pretty fantastic projects, I think, and they are being done by individuals. I guess what worries me about this fund is it's a trust. As been alluded to before, that won't maybe get to small parties of individuals. And I've run a business for a long time, and some years you've got to be very disciplined, and you do have to cut your cloth to suit. We all have wish lists, but you've got to be reality always takes over, I guess. And I feel we need to be doing as much as we can to build reserves for climatic events. If we had another flood event, and I hope like hell we don't this year in Canterbury, what's that going to do? We're going to have to borrow money to pay to repair things. So, and I'm also well aware of the impact of the budget that's just been released, and the fact that probably the OCR rate will go up again today, probably 50 points, and we are probably looking at another 50 points next round, which really scares me as well. So because of all these reasons, I'm against this motion. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Hey, great debate on this matter. Firstly, Grant and Vicky, thanks for bringing this to us. I actually do support this, and it's just on the bare facts of it that since we started this fund, and I'm talking about the fund in particular, wow, what a response we've had from our community. 800,000 worth of applications in the first year, 1.5 in the second year, and only being able to allocate a small amount is tough. I support all those community groups out there that are doing great work within our community, and I like the idea of us continuing to support that and getting that money out to those communities to continue that good work. The fact also that we allocated over multiple years last year means that we only have about under 200,000 to allocate for this year. So if we get another $1.5 million of allocation, that's pretty tough. So I support it. I take all the points about the rough times we're in, but I also always will be supportive of urgent action in our community, especially around biodiversity, even though that's not what the Waitaha Action Fund is all about, but it is a significant part of it. So I do support it, and have welcomed the debate on this. Thank you, Chair.
Cheers. Look, I've just got to. Is anybody else want to speak? Ian. No, you can speak now because we'll go back to the substantial motion. You want to speak now?
We haven't got that yet.
We haven't got the substantial motion yet, so.
But you can speak on
you
this.
Can speak now. You can speak now.
Okay, right. Look, thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems to me we shouldn't be debating the merits of the Waitaha Action Fund, Impact Fund, because I don't think anybody around here disagrees with its intent. But this is about fiscal and financial responsibility. And we went out to the people and asked them about signaling we wanted to limit the rate rise to no more than 10%. And I think they supported that concept. There were more people who were advocating for a lower rate rise than there were for an increase in rate rise. And I think we have to be significant about that. We have to be cognizant of that. But I think the most important principle we have to think about as a council is that our chief executive has been driving an austerity program. Might not be quite the right term, but it's certainly a significant reprioritization of how we deliver on our levels of service. And that's come back with a $4 million proposal in terms of savings, but it also involves quite a lot of personal sacrifice from Stephanie and her team. Now, if this council then takes the ill-disciplined approach of saying, oh, we'll just add a bit on here or add a bit on there, and Tautoko Nook's comments about the fact that there are two motions in front of the council here, and if one is passed, then that probably leads to the second one likely to be passed, is that actually what we're saying is that despite all the sacrifices our staff are lining up to make in the next 12 months to try to retain some fiscal discipline and our rates rise, the council is going to carry on spending money regardless. And I go back to Giles's comments when he was introducing the first motion we've already passed today, is that he said that this plan carries significant financial risk. But believe if the council agrees to limiting the rate rise to the 10%, then he thinks those risks can be managed. We need to think about that. We need to be absolutely responsible here. And life doesn't always allow you to do everything you want to do, as Councillor Ward has said. And so we need to vote against this amendment and the next amendment.
Thank you, Smee.
Brown does get a
yeah, you will, but I'm the last speaker for the round the table, if you don't mind, Graham. If that's okay with you. Look, I find myself being a bit torn between two things here, but fundamentally I do not support a rate increase, and the reason for that is on a different level from some of the discussion that's been taking place. Fundamentally, terrestrial biodiversity isn't our responsibility. So if you look at our pure business as usual, or business that we do need to conduct, that doesn't fit there. But the community's been asking for that, and I'm not saying that we have done a bad job. I think that we've done a bad job. But if you can remember during the process of when we engaged with the community and they did come in, my suggestion to them is that we're doing it badly. We're doing funding across Canterbury, across Banks Peninsula, across Christchurch badly, where organisations looking for money are taking a begging bowl approach to it, and we haven't got a strategic view on what we should be doing as a community. 100% support what's going on in Banks Peninsula because they're wonderful people, and you know that's I always see the emotional side of their asking for money. But I would stress the fact that we have got a fiscal responsibility to our community, and we're the ones that make that decision. That's why you're here. You're here to make this tough decision. we get to do the three things. We get three things to do. Fiscal, we get to do the strategic stuff. We get to employ Stephanie, and we get to understand what the finances look like. And my problem with this is that we're getting into transactional stuff around this annual plan when we should be standing firm and upholding our reputation that when we went out to engagement, which is we will hold firm on what we said. That's a really tough position for us. Really tough position for this council to say that. Because if you looked at what we do require, we probably require 18 to 20%. Because that's the amount of costs that we've got internalised. That's the amount of savings that we're asking this organisation to make. So from that point of view, and I'm not against what you're trying to put forward here, Councillor East and Councillor Southworth, but that's my view on this. So we'll now go to you. We'll go to Vicky first. Vicky's got, no, Vicky, sorry. Go to you, bro.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks everybody for the discussion. A couple of things. My feeling is that we didn't go to the community with a draft annual plan that said we will limit to 10%. We went to them with a proposed 10%. We also sought community's feedback on that annual plan. And we are responsible to take heed of feedback from a lot of people who came and presented to us. And a lot of that feedback was doing more for the environment. And, you know, I believe that the proposed motions there, that the increase of 0.53%, I think, no, it's even less than that, 0.33%, is not significant and it's not material. It is within the realms of our fiscal responsibility. It delivers on key priorities in terms of our declaration of climate and ecological emergency in 2018. And that is, at the same time, we indicated that there would be a step change in our attitudes for biodiversity. In 2020, we set a strategic direction which suggests that we would be transformational in dealing with climate change. As one of our core purposes, our core purpose was to deal with climate change. And we indicated in that strategic proposal that we would accelerate regeneration of the natural environment. And that we would make good decisions by listening to the people, that we would work in collaboration with partners. These are the principles that we're going to operate under, and taking into account cultural, social, economic, and environmental well-being. And part of the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund, and allowing the people to feel that they contribute to their own personal health and the well-being of our environment through planting projects. And this is a good way of doing that. People get out there en masses and they have a great day. They socialise, they're talking to people, and they're feeling that they are contributing to climate change. I hope that when we vote on this, that people who have said that they might be against it will actually change their mind. We are fundamentally here to consider the intergenerational environment that we are. It is a challenging exercise, but we do need to think intergenerational. And my feeling, I said in my February speech, that if we don't do this and we stick to this 10% proposal, that in effect we're just continually in catch-up mode for our real environmental issues. And I said at that time that operating a business as usual approach to overcome short-term economic pressures will not deliver a better planned future. And instead, we're going to be continually reacting to the issues as they arise. And that approach in the future, if we don't just chip away at these things, will become unaffordable. And I note too, in terms of the government's recent budget announcement, that they have also indicated that the inflation rate has come down from where we sat in February. It's now 6.7. It might even be less. So for those, for those sorts of things, well, all I'm going is a figure that was released by the government. So things are not, but as I'm saying, this is short-term thinking, and I think we need to think long-term. So I'm hoping that people will vote in support of these motions.
Thank you for that. Look, we've given this a pretty good go round. I think the reason to do this is because it substantially sets the tone of where we're headed, and may actually increase our time on other amendments or diminish them. So I'm not sure. But listen, I'm going to right up the top end of this call for a division on this vote. I think it's only fair that we do that, and we don't have to go through that process twice. So what we will do is we'll put the motion to you now and ask for those who are in favour of it to raise their hands so that we can note them under the division, and then we will look for those who possibly are not in favour of them. So all those who are in favour of 1.1, please raise their hands.
Let's go around.
Is it a voice thing? So Councillor DJ, are you in favour? You're in favour? Councillor Robinson? Councillor Davies? Do we go around all the councillors or just the ones with their hands up? Okay. Councillor Korako? Councillor Mackay? Councillor Ward? Councillor Sunkel? Councillor Cranwell? Councillor Southworth? Four. Councillor Burns, for. Councillor Swiggs, against. Councillor East, and Councillor Mackenzie. And I've indicated that I'm not in favour. And Councillor Pauling. Yeah, we are. That's what we're doing. Now that's what we're doing. That's what the division is for. Sorry. In favour, we had 7 for, 8 against, and 1 abstention. So the motion is lost. Fair enough. Okay, so we'll move forward. Councillor Edge and Councillor Southworth, are you happy to put that second motion as mover and seconder? Sorry, moved by Councillor Edge and seconded by Councillor Southworth, and that is 1.2. Okay, Grant.
I wonder if we could get clarification on the percentage increase for 250,000.
Sorry, Grant, you're seeking that from Giles. Put your button down.
Question of clarity. 1.2 effectively says much the same as 1.1, but it's talking about allocating $250,000, which isn't in the current budget, into the Waitaha Impact Fund. Is there my question is, for clarity, and however you might want to put this, Peter, is there any substantial difference between 1.1 and 1.2, given that we've already lost 1.1?
Well, that's what we're going to approve. I think we should allow Grant to have the clarification around this question. I think we'll just, Councillor, if we'll adjourn for a couple of minutes here. Councillor, I think if you go down and speak with Giles, and we'll get that substantiated one way or the other. Okay, we're 155, so we'll get going again. So we'll move back to you, Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so in moving this amendment, it is different to 1.1. And so far as 1.1 was about not losing some money that had already been allocated to that project, whereas this is 1.2 is about some additional money for this project. Same kind of issues, really. 0.015 percentage increase in the rates is not significant. It's almost insignificant. We opted to try to maintain the 10% as indicated in the annual plan 22-23. And we know that's been difficult and staff have reacted for that. We know about global inflation. We know about interest rate rises. We know about the legislative changes are coming and all the issues that have been incorporated into the plan. We know about the reprioritisation, but those reprioritisation issues are staff-driven reprioritisations. And to my mind, they haven't fully considered what the public are telling us in our submissions process, or not in submissions, in the engagement process. And I said before, you know, economically, we're just in a bit of a blip. That blip will come right, I'm sure. And a lot of economists are sure as well. But we're here to address long-term environmental management. That's why we're here. If there's some social inequity issues, central government needs to deal with those issues as well. So I've proposed this change, and it's basically 0.016. In order to continue the important journey, restoring ecology to Canterbury and help address climate change impacts in the future. These projects are proven to be good for people's health and physical well-being. I can't say any more than that. I hope people accept that 0.015 is actually small price to pay for something that has fantastic social and environmental benefit.
Okay, Mihi, have you got something to say to this?
I have, thank you, Chair. Yes, so just we've talked a lot about the cost of rates and the rises and the 10%, but there's also cost of inaction. There's a cost of not addressing our biodiversity crisis. And we also hear about this. We didn't do enough when times felt better than what they do now. And we can't keep on waiting for when we think. I can hear from across the table, no one's expecting our economy to get better, from the sounds of some of my colleagues' laughter across the table. So exactly when do we resolve the crisis for our climate and for our biodiversity? We actually have to get on with things. And we have a community we heard from who are desperate to put spades in the ground and to do work and to educate younger generations so that they can continue the hard work that they're going to have to do to try and put right the mess that we've delivered them. So I think the very least we can do is contribute what I think is an average of around $1 a year per rating unit that will bring back $1.50 of action on the ground, which seems to me like an extremely good and effective way of using our rates. In terms of extra work for staff, this isn't extra work for staff. Our staff are going to have to go through all of the applications that will come forward for this fund. And I can't actually think of anything more depressing than receiving $1.5 million worth of applications and being able to and having to say no to almost every one of them, bar $183,000. This particular proposal is going to bring the amount in this fund back up to where it was last year. So last year we gave $600,000 to the Waitaha Action to Impact Fund. It was really well allocated and it has delivered good work, and we can do the same again. This is simply bringing it back to where it was last year. So I would like to say that actually in the grand scheme of things, $1 extra per year is a really, really good way of getting something on the ground and giving people hope that we can actually still do good stuff even when times are hard. Thank you.
Substantially, we've debated this about you know, where the money should it be there or not? Okay, unless anyone's got anything to add, people have made their positions pretty clear on this. Councillor Swiggs.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I just wanted to clarify what I heard before in the debate. And the actual increase from the calculations that I did would be 0.165, not 0.0165. So if we're talking about numbers, we just need to make sure that we get them clear and good.
Thank you for that. I don't need it if we need to extend this any further than what we have, unless there's another view around the table. I'm happy to take that on board, but I'm just prepared now to put that 1.2 to the council. And again, we will go through the division process and Oliver will go through the names. Oliver.
This is random, by the way.
It's random. Great.
Cranwell? Oliver do it. Oliver's do it. Councillor Cranwell? Councillor Ward? Councillor Swiggs? Councillor Kodako? Councillor Burns? 4. Councillor East? James. Councillor Mackay? Councillor Robinson?
4.
Councillor Davies? 4. Councillor Edge? 4. Councillor Scott or Chair Scott? Councillor McKenzie? Councillor Pauling? 4. Councillor Sanko? Councillor Deche? Councillor Southwest? Full.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. According to the division, the motion has lost 8-7 with 1 abstention. So thank you. Thank you, Councillor Edge. I think we've had a pretty good debate at your instigation around these things. The matters are obviously unresolved and need our attention going forward. So I'm really happy that we've done this. Right, have we got anybody else? So we've got this substantive motion 2 there in front of us, moved by Councillor Sunkel and seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Is there any other, is anybody else seeking an amendment to that motion? Do you want to speak to that motion, Councillor Sunkel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, I absolutely understand what the Waitaha Action Fund does, the work that we are doing and the actions that we take. So my conversations in the past are not about the actions, the outcomes. They are all worthy. It is about the process that we have been through. So I just, finally speak in support of the substantive motion that sits there and recognise the work that we will need to continue to do on the matters that have been discussed today. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna. I didn't say anything in the first part, but I just wanted to say in this one that I acknowledge the amount of work that there's been done on the annual plan, and to get it to where we sort of drew that line in the sand at that 10%. And I'm not particularly happy saying 10%, but we've got to do what we've got to do in this respect. And I was just looking through the numbers, and I think the reprioritisation that we have, that the staff have gone through, have cut a potential 2.65% increase on the rates on top of the 10%. And then reading through the lines between the budget, there could potentially be an extra 5% on top of that again. So we're actually close to what you were saying, the 18% potentially. So I think there's been an incredible amount of work gone on in this organisation to get that down to that line in the sand that we drew, notwithstanding all of the other amazing work that's going on. And all of the other sort of passions that we've got. But if we keep adding 0.165% here and another little bit there, it becomes unsustainable. And then where do you draw that line? So, yeah, again, I just wanted to say thanks for the work that you've done here. And I look forward to seeing it come back on the 21st of June.
I'm finalising this now, so Councillor McKenzie has now indicated that he will speak.
Very briefly, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I support this motion. I am, like several other councillors, disappointed we have to go to a 10% rate rise. But I note that within that, there are a lot of people in the community who will be equally unhappy with the fact that there are multiple programs we aren't going to fund in this instance. And in fact, one of the most pressing is putting more money into flood protection for our communities. But I support the notion of the fact that we are going to be fiscally responsible and try to restrict our expenditure as much as possible. So I support this motion.
Thank you for that. Before I put the motion to the council, can I say that during this debate, I've made a commitment that we need to get better at this, and I'm vowing to work with Deputy Chair Pauling and also Councillor Burns and Councillor East to ensure that we get better results here. I think we need to have a wider strategy than the big and bold stuff that we have to go through here, because it becomes quite emotional. And then it's like, you know, it's a cup of coffee here and a cup of coffee there to do real good. And I think we're better than that. I think we need to be better than that, actually. So with that, I'd put the motion there, moved by Councillor Sunkel, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against? And that's carried. And that pretty much finalises our business for today. Item 8, the next council meeting will be held on the 21st of June 2023 at 10:30. And Councillor South, are you happy to see us out with a karakia?
Unahia, unahia, unahia ki te urutapu nui o tāne. Kia wātia, kia mama, pinako te tinana. Te wairua e tarara takata. Roira e rongo, whakaera ake ki runga. Kia tina, tina, homie, huie, ai, kia.